Good morning and happy Friday. I'd like to thank you for joining us today for our recommended training. I am Ira Farley and I'll be your host during this session. For technical support, Kamisha Busby will be assisting. Before we get started, here are a few reminders. The session is being recorded for better audio quality. Please remember to mute your microphones when you're not speaking, either on your computer or phone. Just be mindful of that. Handouts for the training were distributed prior to this event. If you did not receive handouts, then please email mchtraining@health.ok.gov and they will be sent to you. Again, mchtraining@health.ok.gov. During the session, feel free to ask questions at the discretion of the presenter. At that time, if you can unmute your microphones. If this is not an option, we have a chat feature within the meeting application. Feel free to use this during the presentation. The presenter will allocate time during the presentation to address those questions. As a reminder, attendees are to complete verification of attendance by the way of individual sign-in form. The link to access the form will be sent or placed in the chat feature. This will enable DNMs to easily verify attendance for this recommended Title X training. We would like to thank Brittany Couch for presenting today. She is the Senior Coordinator of Behavioral Interventions, Services, and Supports in Schools at the Oklahoma Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. The young people of this generation have experienced life-changing events that have reshaped the world. In the age of technology, young people are thriving and struggling more than ever. In this training, you will learn what the research shows about youth struggling with mental health challenges and discuss strategies for how to engage with them and help them access the support they need to improve their emotional health. Brittany, the time is yours now. Thank you for joining us. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now, Ira?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to make sure I'm not unmuting too early. You know, it's always when someone is talking to you that you can't find the unmute button. So good morning, good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. So the first thing that I want to make sure that I lay out is if you are comfortable, you can show yourself. I understand if you don't feel like it, because in the age of post-pandemic, people get burnt out with having their cameras on. And I also understand you may be moving around and doing things. And I see some of my colleagues in the line that I know, Brittany Clark and Alicia Lincoln. Happy to see you all, that you're here as well. And happy Friday to everybody. So if you are up for it, please, by all means, you can turn your camera on, but if you don't, that is okay. So one of the things I like to tell everybody, our titles are very long. I saw Ira kind of tripping over the name. I do as well. So, to bring it down and boil it into a nutshell, the Behavioral Intervention Services and Supports Program in school, also known as BIS, is one of our largest school-based programs at the Department of Mental Health. And, essentially, it really is about bringing the wraparound perspective that we already provide in the community in all 77 counties into our schools in a way that works for students, their families, and teachers and staff, and helping everyone to work together as a larger collective whole, and really implementing and embedding trained mental health staff in the schools as well. So you might have heard of the program called BIS. It's a long program. Just think school-based services and really bring in the wraparound approach into schools. So one of the things that I told Ira and Kamisha ahead of this call is I like to be very interactive with my participants. So, and that's why, if you want to have your camera on, that's great, because I try to pay really close attention to reading body language. I've kept the slide deck very short for a couple of reasons today. For one, I actually want to provide more time for us to discuss ideas and solutions and for you all to share your insight about what you're experiencing in your work, how and then how it can the information that I'm sharing with you all and the work that you do, the resources can be individualized and helpful in a way that makes sense. Ira and Kamisha have explained that you all work at different health departments across the state in various different roles. So there's a spectrum of people on the calls today coming from lots of different backgrounds. So how you interact with children and young people might be very different. Some of you all might be working with certain age populations. Some of you all may be working in specific settings. And then, when we think of the people that are tied to the young human beings, parents and caregivers, all of that is very different. So one of the things that I want to do before we get started, we're going to establish some team community agreements and needs for the day. But also what I want to do is just get a weigh-in of who's on the call, because that helps me to make sure that as we are having this time this morning, I want it to be completely useful for you and for you all to walk away feeling equipped with something that you can actually use, and especially on a Friday. And I want the time to be enjoyable. So I am going to pull up my slide deck. As I do that, the first question that I would like for you all to answer for me is to tell me, what is your job? So before you type it in and press enter in the chat, I want to give everybody a chance, because I know some of you all might be on your phones as well, is type it into the chat, but don't hit enter until I ask you, okay? But I want you all to just, you can put your title. What do you do? As far as being, a health representative, what is your role? And it doesn't have to be your technical title. Like I said, it could just be kind of boiling it down to like school-based mental health treatment and prevention. Or, maybe you're a nurse, or you're a community trainer, or you're based in a school and you provide wellness training to kids and families and staff. So whatever your position, your role is, in a nutshell, in a way that makes sense, I want you all to think about that, and then I will ask you to press enter and drop that in. All right. On the count of three, 1, 2, 3, drop it in. Let's see. So everyone will be able to see everyone's results. I'm going to start up at the top. Let's see here. We got family planning, we have nurses, we have epidemiologists, we have pregnancy prevention, nurse practitioner, adolescent health specialist, administrative assistants, health educators, nurse practitioners. Thank you all for that. It's so funny. I have Teams on my phone, so as you all are dropping this in, even my watch is going off with the little bing bing. And if you see me looking down, I am looking at what you all are putting in the chat. Okay. All right, so I'm going to pull up my slides. Give me 1 second. I'm just making sure I load this correctly. slide share. So I could get so used to using one platform. Using Teams is a little bit different for me. I'm so used to Zoom. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. So you might see yourself for a quick second. Alrighty. And Ira, can you tell me, or someone in the chat, can you all see my PowerPoint slide? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. All right. So based on the spectrum again of where everybody is coming from, this is kind of what I boiled the theme down to is Kamisha reached out to us and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make this the title. And like I said, I am not going to overcomplicate it. I feel like, especially with everyone that's on the line, you all are going to be probably just as informed as I am on the current state of things. And I was just telling Ira this morning, I'm really going to do less of focusing on the stats and where we are and more on, so what do we do? What do we do for each of us in our roles? This is every single day and really taking advantage of every single interaction, every single communication with young people, with the families and staff and community people that are supporting them. And how do we make every opportunity count? Okay. And this is our agenda. So we're going to do some grounding, give a welcome, share with you all a little bit about my background, the current state of things, which will be very brief. And then we're going to spend this time really discussing and communicating about how do you all work through those obstacles and how can the resources help you in such a way in taking action with that. So the first thing that I want to do is offer to everyone, and I'm going to put this in the format for me to edit. We do this, this is part of our philosophy and our treatment division for children's services at the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. For every training that we have or every workshop that we hold, we are very big on modeling back to participants, whatever audience they are, exactly what it is we're asking you to do with families and their with families and young people. Okay, it's important for us to set that tone in terms of the philosophy really being an outflow of how we communicate all the time. So you know, even in terms of the slide background that I picked for you all, I picked these colors because it's Friday. My voice sounds like this. I've been leading our part of the conference planning team for our statewide children's mental health conference that we have every year. This was our 30th anniversary, and I was supporting our youth and young adult specialists run the youth track and plan for that this week. So I apologize for sounding a little bit hoarse and kind of stopped up, being in a cold hotel, running around working with you know, young people and the presenters. I've kind of lost my voice a little bit, but even just in thinking about the slide background for today, I want it to be something that could be calming to your eyes, something and even how we're presenting I'm presenting the content being flexible to meet you all where you are, knowing that Friday tends to be everybody's favorite day because it's kicking off the weekend in a time of relaxation. So one of the things with community needs, what I want you all to take a second and think about is, as we are training and we're in this virtual environment, and I want it to be as participatory and useful for you as possible, what helps you to get the most out of training? Okay, so it might be really providing examples or concrete resources, maybe even having a time to discuss an example more in depth. In terms of your needs, what's something right now in terms of your work in the population you serve as it relates to young people? What are you needing right now? When we think about the mental health challenges and the emotional challenges of our generation Z and millennials that you're serving, what is it that you need? And the next generation, for those little itty bitties, and that might be maybe even needs of um for parents, because if you're serving the under 5 population, their needs are completely tied to their caregivers. And I say that knowing that we're talking about kids that may not be in their birth home, they may be in custody, they may be in multiple systems, they may be in foster care, removed from the home. So when we think about that, what is it that you need right now in your work as it relates to the challenges you're seeing with the children that you're serving, whatever age range they are? So what I like everyone to do right now is, if you all will drop that into the chat with those community needs, I will make sure that I add that in here. So the goal being, by the time we get to the end of today's training this morning, hopefully I have provided some resources that will be useful to you. And if I don't have them with what I currently have now, I will uh, spend this afternoon gathering those resources and some contacts to provide to Ira and Kamisha, and they can send that out to you. So I'm going to put the needs up here at the top, and then the community agreements. Like I said, that is, what do you need? How do you need this training to be for you to get the most out of it, for it to be effective for your time? So if it's an agreement, you can put agreement before it in the chat. But if you have a need, if you will place that in the chat, I will add it here. And I'm seeing Kamisha saying how to navigate the current landscape. Thank you, Kamisha. And Kamisha also had in there changes to make within our approach in educating families. Does everyone right now feel like Kamisha has got that in a nutshell for you, or is there anything else that you all want to add to that? Okay, we got how to help those who are in high risk, well, because they who are exhibiting high risk sexual behavior and drug use. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I'm writing down some resources to kind of complement and to addition what I have, some of the things that you all are talking about. All right.
Yeah.
Destiny has strategies to help engage and provide resources for youth who are struggling. Thank you. Any more? I'll give you all about 2 more minutes. Okay. See some more. Okay. Miss Alicia says, always appreciate tips on what we can do as parents of teens and ideas for the parents of adolescents we work with. Thank you, Alicia. Okay. All right, so I'm going to take it as that being the list of our needs today. I got them boiled down. So I'm going to kind of change those so it'll be easier for you all to see. All right, so for agreements, is there anything else that anyone would, oh, let's see. Ira said maybe strategies to help us identify youth that are struggling. Thank you. Great, Ira. Okay. I'm gonna take a screenshot of this so I don't have to keep going back to it on the slide deck. All right, got it. Okay, so we got our needs for the call. Anything that anyone would like to add to agreements, and if there's something that we want others to refrain from doing or we think is very important, we just want to state what we're asking everyone to do instead of don't do this. So, we have keeping our mics muted unless you're speaking, being patient with each other, ourselves, and technology, practice stepping forward and stepping back, making sure that we allow for everyone to be a part of the conversation, especially those that are not super chattery like myself. So, I will make sure that I'm taking pauses to see if anyone has questions, if we're on the same page, anything is confusing. But even in the chat forum, and I'm going to give you all the space to unmute to talk as well, making sure that we keep our comments brief. We have about 50 people on the call or so, but we want to make sure that we give everybody the space to feel a part of the conversation and add to it. Is there anything else that will be useful for you all? Okay, so the only thing I would add, if everybody is okay with it, is we're gonna have some fun. I don't know anyone who normally turns that down in training. So, with that said, our agreements, how we're agreeing to be with each other on our call until for the next hour and probably about 45 minutes. We're going to keep our mics muted unless we're speaking. Be patient with each other, ourselves, and technology. Practice stepping forward and stepping back and have fun. And of course, if you are a person that needs to move around you're just kind of listening and you'll have the recording, you'll have the PowerPoint, that is fine. But stay in tune and everyone participate. That's how we get the most out of it. If this is a set of team agreements that works for everyone, can I get you all to give me an emotion reaction in the chat with a thumbs up if this works for you? Or you can type in thumbs up if you cannot find the reaction button. I see Kamisha's hands. And I'm going to wait to give the majority of everybody on the call a chance to react. Thank you, everybody, as you all are weighing in. Seeing lots of reactions. And like I said, as we're going through all of this, is part of the learning, and I'm trying to meet some of the needs even as we're going through our community agreement. So, one of the things I can say is where we all can start in our work, however it is that you are interacting with the children and the young people that you're working with. And when I say youth, young adults, we're talking about from literally birth all the way up to age 25. That's how far up we go in our children's division. Um, every single interaction, whether it is electronic, it is audio, it is physical face to face, in person, is an opportunity for us to plant a seed on, of wellness, of helping the young people and those adults that are connected to them. So one of the things for us in our division that's very big, and for our mental health providers who are utilizing the wraparound approach to do this work, is we need to really meet families where they are. That starts with being family driven and youth guided, meaning that their voice is a part of the process from beginning to end. They're a part of the process from beginning to end. When we think about two of the key principles we need to keep in mind, it is persistence, never giving up on them as clients, uh, as your own children, working with them, their families, and being dedicated to that with compassion. Cultural competence, cultural humility is understanding that we may not know all of the facts. And typically for us, for all of us in this social service field, when people are coming to us, it's especially, and for the kids, it's when folks are oftentimes struggling and life is the hardest. So what that means is we need to understand that when they walk into the doors of your health departments, when you are at their house or meeting them in the community, it might be when they're in a very vulnerable place. It might be when they're in the most vulnerable place. So what we really need to keep in mind for our perspective as the worker is that persistence, making sure that their voice is always a part of the process, and walking with a sense of humility in that, how they are with us we may not be seeing the big picture. Okay. We may not know all of everything. How they are interacting with the rest of the world really may be where they are when they are at their wits' end. We may be seeing a trauma response. So our focus really needs to shift from what's wrong with you? What are you doing to what happened? What did this kid not get that they needed? What are they not getting right now that they need? What is their behavior in the way they're engaging and interacting with me in the world? What are they trying to tell me? Am I listening? Okay. So really having this shift in our mind where we're really working through a lens of cultural competence. We're working through a lens of being trauma informed, and what that really translates to with our work is being patient. So, when we're short on time, we have a lot to do. Maybe you're not having the best day, you don't feel well. It means that maybe before we get started, I put my computer down, I set my clipboard down. Before I just completely dive into what it is I need to accomplish with them for my job and my goals, or even as a parent, what I need them to do, I'm taking the time to slow down to see, are we on the same page? Are they with me? Okay. And if not, in that moment, it doesn't mean that we're trying to fix it, but it means that we can take time as a worker, as a parent, to acknowledge where they are and be mindful of that as we move forward. So as we continue in that work with the young people, with the caregivers and the community partners who support children, it means that we need to remember that every single time we're providing education, every single time we are working to provide an intervention and a support, we need to move with our clients, with our consumers, with our patients, with our community partners. Sometimes in the busyness of what we're doing, or the frustration with someone else, we're just so focused on getting the work done that we kind of bulldoze the process. And when we do that, learning cannot occur. I'll often say at time for a lot in our school-based work is if especially for a child, if they are in survival brain, there is nothing that you're going to give them that's going to stick because they're not in their learning brain. Okay. So it's going to be very important for us to keep in mind this perspective that we're always going to be able to, get the job done per se, but there are going to be times where we really may need to slow down. And the reason why we're slowing down is our ability to be effective in our work, whether you are a worker and as a parent, the foundation for that is based on relationship. Okay. So when we think about the current state of everything, that really is what this whole presentation is going to boil down to is um, the state of our country, our world, things that are going on, and things that happen outside our control, terrible things that we see on the news. What we can do and where it goes back to the root of is building, repairing, and even changing the state of relationships. That's what we're going to have to work on because what COVID has really done is it's exacerbated and shown us cracks in systems, how we think, things that we think have not been important, mental health, emotional health, and connection. We kind of take these things for granted. We took them for granted, and COVID really highlighted those things. And the challenges we're seeing in our young people have always been there. But the need has become more severe because it highlighted those things that were kind of in the background before. And Kamisha has dropped into the chat as well a sign-in sheet for the training today. So keep those things in mind is relationship, 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 and moving at a pace. Um, uh, so Ira is adding to that. How do we move and not bulldoze? And what does it mean to get the job done? Okay, so I'm going to add that in there. And I have a great resource for you all that would be helpful in terms of a training that's really concrete to be able to work with that. Thank you, Ira, for adding that. So what we are going to do now is we are going to play a short round of life experiences bingo. So what I want you all to do, you will just, if you have a piece of scratch paper, it could be a Post-it. I would like you to just pull it out and you're just going to do tally marks for yourself, okay? And what we're going to see is how quick we can get the first person, it might be people that get to 5 of these experiences, you can actually call out bingo. And if we don't get it at 5, then I will do the tally mark at 10. Okay? All right. So the first life experience is if you've ever been on a plane. All right. Second life experience. We're in Oklahoma. Let's go with if you've ever been to a rodeo. Next life experience, if you've ever been to the beach. All right, our next one would be if you have ever, let's see, rode a horse. Next, if you have ever sang in a choir. Oh, we got lots of bingos. All right. Everyone's like, bingo, bingo, bingo. Okay, so I'm just gonna pick on one person. Risa, if you will unmute, will you share with us what beach have you been to?
Oh, I have been to a few beaches. One of my
Okay.
favorites is 30A in Florida,
Okay.
Destin, Panama City area.
Okay, good old
Yeah.
Panama City.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Michelle, been on a plane. What is the most exciting or memorable plane ride that you or destination you've ever been to?
About probably 20 years ago, my parents and I flew to Germany to and went and stayed 14 days over there and went to different countries.
That's very cool. Thank you, Michelle, for sharing. Okay, so let's see here. I'm going through. Randy, tell me a rodeo that you went to that you really enjoyed or you remember. Randy might be trying to figure out how to unmute. And Randy, if you can't unmute, you can put your answer in the chat. What's a memorable rodeo experience, a one that you loved? Okay, I'm not seeing anything from Randy. Wait, let me see. Oh, she said she's never been. Kamisha, you've never been to a rodeo? Kamisha, you got to get on that, girl. They're here all the time.
It looked like Randy tried to unmute, but I'm not for sure. We didn't hear
Okay.
anything. So I
She's
don't know if
trying.
there's mic issues.
Yeah, she might be trying to unmute her. You know, it's always when you unmute and then that's when your computer mic doesn't want to work.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've been here all my life, no rodeo. That's sad.
Oh my goodness, Kamisha, you got to pick one. There are lots to go to. So, let's see. I'm gonna go to Joe. Okay, Joe, what's a rodeo you've been to, a memorable one? Oh, wait, here it is. Randy said, I guess you couldn't hear me. I go to the rodeo with my friends in Okmulgee often. Okay, see? So, Kamisha, maybe Randy can invite you up. Okmulgee has them all the time. You just make a little trip.
Hey, this is Joe and Kamisha. This weekend in Surreal is the Rattlesnake Festival, and they also have a rodeo.
Of course they do. Thank you, Joe. That sounds like a lot of fun. So let's see. We talked about the play. Okay, so let me go with, I'll give anyone an opportunity who sang in a choir. Was it a community choir? Was it faith-based? Was it with your school? Who wants to share? Anyone about their choir experience?
Well, I'll share again, even though I've already spoken. I
Go
grew
for
up
it.
singing in my church choir
Mhm.
and ensembles. I never sang in the school choir, but church, yes.
Okay, thank you, Joe. And Leah is like middle school. And for myself, I sang in the church choir. I sang in a community choir. I didn't do it in middle or high school because I went to a performing arts school. So it would be like really serious. I was not a choir kid like that, but I was in a community choir from the time I was a kid all the way to when I graduated and went to college. And it was quite phenomenal. We sang lots of different songs, exposure to lots of different music genres from chorale. I'll share my most memorable experience was actually singing songs from the book of Isaiah at Westminster church. And it was really cool because from our choir of like almost 100 kids, they picked a small group of like less than 10 of us, and we sang there, and it was so beautiful with the acoustics. And normally kids don't really care for like choral operatic type music, but it was the coolest experience to kind of have it echo like that. And then I was saying on the exact opposite is still singing with that same community choir and going out to perform in the community and singing Under the Sea. And one of my friends, who's still a close friend of mine, she was the crab from The Little Mermaid, and she danced through all of the people sitting in table and chairs in a life-size crab suit. So that was lots of fun. And Joe, you already answered my question. I was like, are they going to eat the rattlesnake? I didn't want to be mean, but yes, that's what I was wondering. Deep fried rattlesnake. So you hunt them and then you eat them. Those poor snakes, but hey, I'm not going to be mad about that. So thank you everybody for participating. And again, this goes back to, what we just did. That was all of about less than 5 to 8 minutes. But, in the time when and again, I know everybody is short on time. When you are working with your clients as community workers, we can always take the time, even if it's just less than 2 minutes, to do a small check-in, to kind of connect with our the kids we're working with, their families before we get to work. Okay, so that goes to one of our first concretes about how we work to get the job done. We actually are working towards getting the job done when we stop to really every single opportunity use it to build rapport with your clients, to build rapport with your kids before we're starting to work on those tasks towards our action steps in our work. Okay, so that little bit of rapport building goes a long way. The next thing that goes a long way with that, that I am going to take a second and ask you all to respond to in the chat, is doing a temperature check. Okay, so rapport building is going to be the first, and doing that temperature check. The reason why, especially with young people post-pandemic, it serves to be even more critical, is so many kids have lacked that relationship because the pandemic isolated us physically. We're already working with a generation that has had more access to technology than most all of the previous generations. And I say that being on the cusp of being a millennial. My 15-year-old is like, Mom, you're a millennial. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm Generation X. I was born in 1982. I know a lot of people tell me I don't look at it. I'm about to turn 41. I've been in the field for over 20 years at this point. And everything I identify with is with Generation X. I remember what the world was like before there was technology everywhere. I remember not having my first phone until I was in college, and as a young adult complaining when phones went color. I really missed the green screen. I remember dot matrix computers. I love Pong. I am not good in RPG, which are role-playing games, in terms of the controllers. I miss my Atari controller. I can tell you how to navigate the game, but don't ask me to play it because I look like somebody's grandpa going like this, and I don't know how to walk and move at the same time. It takes me normally about 30 minutes to get my life together, playing Minecraft, so that I can move at a speed. My daughter is laughing at me. She's at home today, dropping blocks. So I say that to say that, with our young people growing up where literally they have been connected to devices since birth, it's a very different way that they relate to each other. How they are connected to each other is also those devices are tethered to them. So, oftentimes you'll hear adults say, well, just disconnect. Well, turn it off. You don't have to look at it. You don't have to respond. You don't have to read it. for them, they do, because that actually is a part of how they identify. That's how they identify. And Joe is like, yes, I'm still a baby, but compared to these young people that are out here right now, I am definitely not in the young adult crowd anymore. I'm like, my life is about credit scores and, getting our kids to college, helping them to have a healthy life. And yeah, I'm not about the social media and posting things and all that. Yeah, no. I remember when Facebook came around, and the only reason I joined, some of my friends were still in college, was they just begged me so that I could connect to them. I was not interested and didn't care. So, there are we just got to keep in mind that as we're working with them, these little things go a long way for you to be able to be most effective in your work. So when we look at the grounding and the temperature check, I'm going to give you all an opportunity to do that now. So, and offering choice. So, with the temperature check, knowing how your client is, when you start your meeting or when you're going out in the community to do the work with them, that's crucial. Knowing where they are so that you as the worker can maybe modify a little bit how you educate, how you present the information, how you have the conversations with them. If I don't take the time and ask, and let's say I'm working with, maybe it's a mom and the baby one-on-one, or, a classroom of fourth graders or community workers that are working with kids. And let's say that something very traumatic or tragic has happened over the past weekend, and I just go straight into the agenda, what we're going to talk about or what we're going to work on, and start to try to dig in. And then I'm noticing, like, I'm putting stuff out, but it is not really sticking. Or I'm not really getting much feedback. Everybody kind of seems to be zoned out. It might be because I didn't take the time to acknowledge where they are. And what we need to remember as the workers, it doesn't mean that for us as the workers, it's your job to dig into the details of that, but just the simple process of acknowledging where someone is and letting them know, I hear you. I'm sorry you've experienced that, or even asking, is there anything I can do? Or to say, you know what, today, instead of doing our normal hour-long education, let's make it about 45 minutes or 30 minutes. You know what, before we start, we're only going to do, maybe you're only with them for 15 minutes or something brief. I'm going to take 2 minutes and give you all just 2 minutes. Let's just do some grounding and deep breathing. It's going to be a day-long training today. I'm going to make sure that maybe I provide some mini breaks, because I understand that everybody's attention may be divided right now. You may really be concerned about what happened over the weekend. Maybe it's something collective that happened in the community. Maybe it's something personal, but I'm going to give you all a little bit more of a break. Maybe instead of the break being 10 minutes, it's 15. You see what I'm saying? So I say that to say, taking that time for the temperature check is not only helpful for the individual young people or the people that work with the young people that you are educating and working with, it's also helpful for you, because if you don't take that little bit of time and you don't know where people are, your presentation might have been flawless. That educational session you did, you hit all the goals of what you needed to cover in the curriculum, but guess what? If the education didn't transfer, if it didn't stick, because people are in surviving brain, not learning brain, the question is I have for you all, have they learned anything? Is their life going to be changed? Is their health going to be improved? Are their outcomes going to be moved as a result of the time that you spent with them? And the answer, I would think that most would say, is probably not. So taking the small amount of time for rapport building, temperature check, knowing where people are, it gives you the opportunity as the wellness professional to pivot and meet people where they are so that you use that time and your expertise to really hone in and not go over their head. Yes, and Brittany said they're most likely going to be less engaged. Yes, because they're like they didn't even check and see how we are. Has anybody ever, maybe you did a training course or a class or a workshop, you delivered your content, maybe it's something that you train on all the time or provide education on, and you're like, okay, that was, covered everything, and then everybody just kind of, when it's over, they kind of get up and leave, and you were like, that was very non-monumental. It's kind of like everybody just walks out and you're like, it seemed like they were just there in body, physically present, but not mentally present. No real questions, and everybody just, they're done. So when we have those types of responses, after we've had, an education session, whether it's like in a more one-on-one or a small format or a larger format, or it's a group of people, we might have missed the ball because we didn't do that simple temperature check. So now what I like for you all to do is take a second and let's look at this list. So I invite you, if this, answer these questions, if you feel some rising emotions, thinking about childhood and it feels triggering, then you do not have to participate. Okay. So please take care of yourself. If it's not triggering, what I want you all to do is just look at the different boxes that are on this page. Okay. And for all of these boxes, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We have 10, okay? There's 10 options on here. And I do not want you all to add your answer to the chat. Rather, I want you to write it down for yourself, okay, on your scrap sheet of paper. Which of these experiences did you have as a child? And it doesn't have to be a young child, but again, all the way up through, let's say, young adulthood, 18, 19 years old, maybe 20, if you were still at home. How many of these did you have if you tally them up? So I'm going to give you all about 3 to 4 minutes to look over this content and just write down the number once you add them up. And I'm going to do the same thing as well. Yes. And you know what? Let's go all the way up to age 25, because I feel that for some of these, especially with the hobbies, physical activities and sports and things like that, resources, let's extend it all the way up to where we would count young adults. So age 25. All right, so now what I want you all to think about is I want you all to think about the clientele you serve as it relates to you just making the decision to participate in this workshop this morning. So that might be your clients, it might be a specific population, it might be for you as a parent, your actual children. And even, again, from our wraparound perspective, caregiving and parenting, it might not even be for children that live in your household. Maybe you have family members, you have uh, uh, loved ones, young people who look up to you, or you are their resource. You are all they have in the capacity of what we would consider a parent. You're who they call when they're in trouble, who they need help, when they are trying to make big decisions. And that goes past age 19, 20, like I said, all the way up to age 25. So, you may be parenting and you may not consider yourself a parent, but if, those things I just said, if you have a young person under 25 that's coming to you and you're the person they'll listen to and no one else, you're their advocate, their primary advocate, you may not realize they are utilizing you. They may see you as a parent. So what I want you all to do now is when you think about the young people you serve, why you signed up for this workshop today, just on average, out of the 10 different things that are listed, the different situations and questions, for those young people you serve or you're in the role as a parent, out of these 10, how many do most of them have? For the population you're working with as a parent, write down that number for me. How many of these do you think that they have? And what I want you to do now is with this question, I do want you to drop that into the chat. So if I think, I do a lot of, in my formal work, I'm working now with adults who serve children. When I get a chance to work with youth and young adults, it's on a much smaller basis. It might be youth that come to a conference that are on our advisory boards. And then I do community volunteering and work where I do workshops like at a drop-in center. So, for those different groups of youth, they're from different places, but most of them don't have these 10. I would probably say they have about 5 of these things. Okay. So what I want you all to do is take the same approach for the population you serve, the clientele you have, the young people that you are there as a parent. Right now, for me, drop into the chat, out of 10, what's their number? What number do they have of these factors in their life? Just a roundabout estimate. So I want to see you all drop that in the chat right now. Out of 10, I'm going to add, for a lot of the young people I serve, I'm adding 5 to the chat. So I see Ariel, Tristan, Julia, Destiny, Misty, Brittany, and Audrey drop some. And again, we have about 50 people on the call. So I'm going to be patient and wait for at least a good 40 of you all to drop in your answers before moving on. So I'm seeing our range is starting to change a little bit. We had 5. Now we're starting to see, and I was trying to be generous with the 5, but I'm seeing lots of 3s. I see some 6s. I see Leah put in a 2. We have 4s. So I'm gonna let a few more people drop in. I feel like we probably have about maybe a third of the people on our call that have shared. What is the range for these factors for the populations you serve in your work and as a parent, where are they? And as we wait, this again goes back to what can we do to not bulldoze? Again, modeling the process for you all. This is what it looks like. So we are covering the content, we're discussing, but I'm moving at a pace with you all. If I said that you all are the client, you all are the young person, I'm covering the content, but I had a choice as a presenter 5 minutes ago when I posed the question. If I only waited when we had the first group of people through, I think it was Brittany C. and Audrey who weighed in, I could have easily gone on to the next point. But what I chose to do was pause and stay with you as the client. That is one of the key principles. If you have been trained and are well versed in motivational interviewing, that I think can be very helpful for everyone on the call. We have that training offered, I think about 4 to 5 times a year. I'm actually one of our trainers in motivational interviewing. I've been working on my training in it for about 3 years now, but that's one of the best things that we can do is to not bulldoze the process. It means that we stay in the boat. So if we have a figurative boat and it's you in the boat and the other person in the boat or people are the folks that you're serving or your kids is am I, and we're in our goal is to get from one side of land across water to the other side where the land is, where it starts again, is how do we navigate together so that our trip doesn't need to be any rockier than it might already be because of life and what they're going through, but 2, we're working together. I'm not knocking you out the boat. And it's like, well, I made it to land. And then you look back and the kid is is in the lake like, hey, you knocked me out. You just kept going. You got to land, but I'm not with you. So, or you got to land, but the experience and the journey was one where they're like, I don't want to do this with you or anybody else again. So that's one of the key things that we can keep in mind as a worker is moving at the pace of our client. And when we really embody the principles of collaboration and being team-based, that means that I can't be collaborative if I'm moving ahead of the person that I'm working with. Collaborative means that if they're not ready to move on to the next action step, or maybe even move from contemplation to action, then my job is to meet them where they are and to stay with them. And if I can do that and I build rapport, guess what? We actually move a lot faster than me trying to drag you along or me leaving you behind. Or sometimes it could be that relationship is severed and they're like, you know what? I don't want to go through an education class or have them as my worker. I want somebody else. Or you know what? I'm just going to drop out of services altogether. You know what? You're my parent. I just don't want to talk to you. I'm not going to share any of what's going on with you. So, that is the takeaway. And I thank everybody who continue to drop that in. So when you all look at what's here, what we're really looking at is we're looking at protective factors. We're looking at asset building, which I know you all completely get and understand. So what we want to remember is that the goal that we have to keep in mind, especially post-pandemic, is that you are the intervention. Full stop. I want to let that settle in. You are the intervention. You're the medicine. The community is the medicine. In order to have community, there has to be some connection, okay? Which means there has to be relationship. When young people are struggling, they need to have a sense of community. people that they know will rally around them and help them. So that also means that it's our job to help other adults understand the importance of us working in a collaborative fashion in our work and in our community. That's asset building for the children and the young people of our community. Families are the medicine. And when I say that, I don't mean families that are healthy and there's nothing wrong going on or nothing risky going on in their lives. I'm talking about for our families that are still, maybe they're like, I'm still in a place of getting my life together. There are still parts of my life that are dysfunctional. There are still parts of my life where I have unhealthy habits. They are still the medicine. Okay. And what I mean by that is if that child, that young person is in a home, and I don't mean a home where there is abuse or violence and they haven't been removed from the home, but I'm saying maybe some of those things have happened. There's been neglect. There's been past abuse, but the adults in the family are on the track to improve things and do better in how they take care of their children and do better in their advocacy, in their parenting. They are still the medicine. Okay. So one of the things that it can be easy for us to do as workers, and this goes back to like the wraparound principles I've been talking to you all about and cultural competence, we have to respect where our families and the young people they come from. We may not understand it. We may not agree with it, but just understand there may be aspects of certain populations of young people that you work with or their caregivers where everything that's different doesn't have to be negative. It also doesn't have to be positive. Some things can just be neutral and it's a fact of their life. So I'll say for you, let's imagine you're working with a young person and they use drugs. Okay. Let's say their parent has struggled with addiction and they're in a place of recovery. They're not perfect, but they're in a place of recovery. Maybe they don't make the best parenting choices. Maybe it's not always the safest choices. But guess what? Those parents for that child is still the medicine. And then it means that it's our job as the wellness and the health professionals to help support the family and support the caregivers so that they can do their best in parenting so that they can start to replace more negative coping strategies with healthy coping strategies, and the same thing for the children in their family. But if we approach the interventions with the standpoint that I'm the healthy person, this parent is like, they're horrible, they're still trying to get their life together, but they're a hot mess and they're dysfunctional, and I'm going to provide all the intervention for the kid to help them learn how to thrive, and no, not the parent. Guess what? That's not going to work. That's not sustainable long term, because at the end of the day, when push comes to shove and that kid is looking for validation and looking for an example of how they lead their life, they will remember what you taught them, but they're also going to go back to the person who is with them in an informal capacity, the people we call in our work informal supports, those people that are there, that are not paid to be there, that will be there when a program is over, when a grant is over, when the day is over. The person they call in the middle of the night, it might be that dysfunctional mom or dad or aunt that you didn't want to interact with. So if I fail to provide that intervention to all of them, and if I don't drop my own judgment about them, as the worker, I've missed the ball, because long term, that intervention is not going to be as effective as if I had involved those adults in the family. So remember that families are the medicine. Even in where there is dysfunction, there are trials and circumstances, they are still the medicine. And thank you, Kamisha dropped in there, implicit bias. And yes, there are times where, we maybe if we have we have enough time, I can pull up a picture for us to do a short activity, but we can see a lot of things and just assume like, oh, this family has all of these needs and all of these problems. Maybe I'll do that before we finish, is we can go over how to change our lens. And I know there's training out there. We do it too on strengths-based orientation. And what I mean by that is it doesn't mean that you ignore the problems that we see, but we also have to recognize that sometimes something that you may see as a problem or how somebody relates and you call it aggressive, culturally within their community, that just may be that when someone is very passionate about something, they talk really loud with a loud voice. It may seem adversarial to you, but maybe from where they come from, that's not being aggressive. That is them being passionate and show that they care. Sometimes it might be that when the parent or the child does not react, or you're expecting someone to look you in the eye or to speak up and say something, they say nothing instead. That is a cultural lens, because in certain cultures, and when I say culture, I just don't mean ethnic cultures, I mean specific populations of people. It could be by economics. It could be the part of the country you live in. In Oklahoma, it could be the region of the state that you live in. It could be whether you're urban, rural, suburban, or frontier. I call it off the grid, not for all the hipster reasons, but how you live and how your community relates to each other, all of that in your belief system, that's your culture. So if you're raised in a community where, it is disrespectful to disagree, even if you don't agree, you would rather remain silent, or because this person is over a certain age, they're seen as an elder and you'd never present opposition to an elder, you and your bias or your assumption, you could assume, if you're reading them from your own cultural lens, that because they didn't give you the answer, they're being disrespectful. But if we don't take the time to know the people that we serve and know our children that we're raising, we miss the boat. With this, like I said, parents are the medicine, and the goal, I want you to take away, and my colleague and dear friend Julie Geddes would say, she's our senior manager of suicide prevention and does a lot over all of our suicide prevention programs for children in the state, is PACEs always trumps ACEs. Okay, so what I'm going to do is not make an assumption. I'm going to ask right now, you can just say yes or no in the chat. Does everyone, if you know what ACEs are, just drop yes in the chat for me. Do you know what ACEs are? And I'm not making an assumption, because I'm like, well, my health people, of course they should know. It's 2023. Of course they should know, that's the basics. But I would be selling myself short, because we might have new people that came to the field, or people where they're still growing in their professional development and they may not have a clue. So us, slowing down, taking the time is also not making the assumptions on that. So I'm seeing complete yeses so far. Okay, yes. So PACEs, those protective and compensatory experiences, PACEs. PACEs always trumps ACEs. Okay, so what we want to keep in mind is, if we look at the list on here, and you might be like, well, Brittany, I get this. A lot of this stuff is home-based. What does this have to do with us? One of the things that I want you to have as a takeaway, OSU Center of, it's like Family Resilience, the Center for Family Resilience, they had an article, and in this article, I'll attach it as a resource. One of the biggest things that's a takeaway I share with everybody all the time is PACEs trumps ACEs, in that if we as a larger community and collective can give and provide kids protective factors to outweigh the ACEs that they've experienced, it always wins. Okay. So even if a child has been or is in an environment where they're not the safest, all of their basic needs are not always met consistently. They don't always have a lot of strong relationships in the household. If they know when they see you as a worker that you are a safe, caring adult, you're giving them resources so that they know how to find other safe, caring adults, how to build their network of support, how to find resources to help them. You're providing those sorts of things in your settings. Those are interventions. Those are PACEs. Okay. One of the biggest takeaways for me right now, I feel like, especially with all of the school shootings, is the Center for Family Resilience actually had in that same study that they did, is for high schoolers. If a high schooler has one parent that they feel that they can talk to, they feel connected to their school community, like actually a part of the student body, and a part of their community, that outweighs all the ACEs that they're experiencing in their life. This is how you help. You are the medicine. So if we, every single time we provide education, we provide opportunities for learning, you're doing wellness checks, and it might even just be checking blood pressure. When we take the time, whether the intervention is 5 minutes, 50 minutes, a whole day, or ongoing, we utilize every single opportunity for the kids that you serve and for those adults who serve kids to model to them, I see you. I hear you. I'm here to support you thriving, being well, and provide an opportunity for choice. Like, how can I help you? Then guess what? We are going to be improving their life and helping them to make it to that next level. So what we're going to do really quickly, for the sake of time, I'm going to let you all know that there is a short little 5-minute video that you can watch here from the Search Institute about the 5 elements of a developmental relationship. Uh-oh, just exit out of my slides on accident. But that's there. So when we think of the current state, what I can tell you as a takeaway, I work across our children's services treatment division and our prevention division. Okay, so a lot of the work I do crosses over. So I'm in staff meetings with both teams. Okay, so right now, especially for us in Oklahoma, it's important to know that suicide rates during COVID, they did decrease. They're increasing more again. I guess you could say going back to average levels. What we are seeing is those numbers tend to be higher in sometimes, or more of a disparity in people of color. The trend is still in place, especially for adults, that males tend to have a higher suicide rate for us in Oklahoma because there is more access to lethal means. One thing that I can say with the national statistic, I want to say the CDC came out with this last month, and we've been talking about it in our staff meetings, and you all might have discussed it as well at your local teams, is that the numbers for teen girls has tremendously increased. It's at like an all-time high. Last year, the numbers were very inflated in terms of teens attempting suicide, but just our young girls being in crisis in the United States, that trend is here in Oklahoma. So how that may show up for you all is seeing more girls that are showing up at local ERs, at the hospitals. It may mean, and what that means for you all that are doing the community work is, as you all are working with students every single time you're providing education, making sure that you give resources for them once you leave, and for the adults so that they know how to find the resources that they need. Connecting them with 988 will be one of the easiest ways. We still have a youth mobile crisis stabilization line that we partner with Heartline Oklahoma and our contracted Department of Mental Health local children's mental health providers. We have clinicians that partner with Heartline to triage and provide resources and answer those calls. And sometimes it may mean that if it's a priority one, that they will send a local mental health team out to that young person in crisis. And that mobile crisis line, I'll give this at the end, it is open to not only you all as workers, but families. It's open to community members. It's open to schools, teachers, and staff at schools. Anybody can call law enforcement. So depending on the call, the way I like to explain it is kind of think of mental health SWAT team. So if the priority is like a level 3, it's something where someone is trying to find resources for a young person, or a young person is trying to find out for themselves, they'll give them a call back or a response within 48 hours. If it's more elevated, it might be within 24 hours. If it's an extreme crisis, they will actually send trained clinicians out to wherever the response is to help with the stabilization. And then they will also coordinate with local law enforcement if that's needed as well. So as you can see on the slides, you can see that the number of girls attempting suicide has drastically increased. Young people that identify as LGBTQ plus, those numbers on attempts are extremely high right now, as well as in tribal young people and but again, across all ethnicities, our young girls are struggling. Going into that, one of the things that is really weighing on and is affecting what we're seeing with them, and with our teens and young people in general, is the effects of social media. You all might have been paying attention recently to some of the conversation nationally that different states are having, Congress is having, about social media, even states trying to really think like, how can we help our kids, and putting restrictions in based on the algorithms of many of these very prominent social media platforms like TikTok and Twitter and things like that. And what I mean by that is what we are now understanding and how this is impacting the social health, the emotional health of our young people, especially post-pandemic, is these algorithms are not always creating traffic for the best reasons. Now, it doesn't mean that everything tech-wise is bad, because one of the things that served as a protective factor to help adults and children, especially during the pandemic when people were physically isolated, was them being able to connect in virtual platforms. And out of that, there have been organizations, there have been initiatives born to really continue to really shift the use of how we use technology, how young people leverage it, so that if they were making connections with people maybe across a certain community or population during the pandemic, with people that they never be able to reach from a physical location, how can we help them to continue to thrive in these environments and make them safe? Or how can we help them to access health and wellness education, support, and interventions virtually. So that is the flip side to it. But what we do know right now is for these platforms, like say for instance, I can tell you if you fit into an age demographic, because you have to put that information in, or it's tracking in some of these devices, and you create an account, it will generate certain, I guess you could say, things that come to the top of the search engine for you based on your age category. Those things that may come to the top are not always focused on protective factors and healthy coping strategies. Let's say, for instance, if you are struggling with an eating disorder, if you look up certain things on Instagram or TikTok, the way that the algorithm works within the platform, it will generate more of that same content. So if I am struggling with making healthy choices and I'm looking up risky choices in terms of video footage on YouTube, or violent content, or unhealthy strategies, instead of these tools being something that can be used for the good, our teens don't recognize that the basic algorithm generates more of what they're looking at. So if we think about that, and we know that, if I look up something that is unhealthy, it's like how to hide drugs from my parents. Well, it generates more of that, then it is not helping me to improve and decrease my risk factors. It's creating more opportunities for me to learn how to engage in more of the dysfunctional behaviors. So our job as the workers and the parents, we have to have ongoing conversations, as well as there's an opportunity to put in filters and things to help keep kids safe, especially for different age categories, and maybe even limiting or stopping access for younger age categories, so that the young people understand that when what you're looking at, it's not just like arbitrary. If I'm 15 and I create an account, TikTok or Instagram is automatically going to send me content in these categories. The teens and the kids that you work with or that are your children, most of them don't know that. My husband and I, we have two kids, a 15-year-old and 11-year-old. They live in a house with two, I guess you could say, wellness professionals. My husband has worked for the Department of Mental Health. He now works for a national public policy organization. He works on opioid and drug prevention and policies around pregnant people and with families. I work in mental health, school-based services, all that sort of stuff. And even for our 15-year-old, when we told him, like, hey, on your account, when you create your profile, the algorithm already automatically generates certain things to come up to your search engine. So when you're looking for things, you're thinking that's just based on what you want to find, but that's not the truth of it. The search engine is kind of filtering and navigating to you what they want you to go to. He was astounded by that. And he lives in a house where we're always talking about, the role of technology and healthy relationships, and what it means to make positive and healthy choices and what negative choices look like. So I say that to say that helping the young people to know these things is the first step, so that they can be more aware that the technology is not always just neutral, or hey mom or dad, or hey nurse, it's not that big deal. When I look this up, it's like, no, you just need to have awareness that these search engines traffic you during to specific content. And where that creates a problem is in how that can also affect what we're seeing with suicide rates and high rates of depression with teens overall, is they're in a vulnerable developmental state. So it's kind of, think of it like how we know that chocolate is a reward to, our bodies at the sensory level. What's it do? It can drive up dopamine, just like, if you go shop or you're watching something you like, you know, it's a reward. Like, we're like, we like it. Our brain likes it, so we want more of it. The teens, when the reason why they're looking for those likes, they're looking for the comments, is it works in that same sort of way. The difference is our brains are fully developed. Their brains are not. Okay. So as their brain is developing, is creating unhealthy attachments on, the opinions of others, the feedback of others, which on the reverse side, we all know what happens when they're not getting the likes, or the reason why they're checking their phone constantly to see, did anybody respond to the content that I put? Or, if, a kid is being bullied in a virtual setting and, 60 anonymous people say kill yourself, why it weighs on the emotional health of a child is because this is what's happening at the cellular level, their brain development, the actual chemicals that are flowing through their body. It can elevate anxiety. It can elevate feelings and create feelings of depression. It can elevate their risk and drive them towards wanting to hurt themselves or engage in more risky behavior. So we just have to help them to understand there's the range of options. As workers, we also need to be having conversations with community members and parents about, and there's a lot that the American Pediatric Society has and the CDC has around limiting technology. Again, it doesn't mean that all technology is bad, but what it does mean, it is a problem if you want to sit a 4-year-old in front of their tablet or have them with a tablet unlimited for hours upon time. Or, my daughter is a 5th grader. She just turned 11 in October. And I remember last year, you all, as a 4th grader, she was like, Mom, there are some of my classmates, and they were like, hey, follow me on social media, or like, do you want my handler? And I'm like, a handler for what? And they were like, they have TikTok accounts. 4th graders with cell phones, with TikTok and Instagram accounts. And they're trying to post and create content for their peers and for other people to give likes, to give comments. Okay. You all think about that. 4th grade girls, 9 and 10-year-olds with TikTok accounts. So when we think about those developmentally vulnerable periods, and when we think about, our older teens and young adults, it's really helping them to see that they have a range of ways that you can use media, but it should not be the center of your life. To understand that it's not neutral, and that if you rely on it too heavily, it really can impact your emotional health. And when we think about online bullying and victimization, we really want to keep in mind that, helping young people to understand that, and parents, that online predators really do, they're not just waiting for kids to present an opportunity. There are many predators that are seeking victims. So, when we look at if a kid has a profile, or if a kid is, let's say, playing an open game like Roadblocks. My daughter, she likes to play Roblox. My son, who's 15, he liked to play when he was in elementary school. We actually limited their access, or which games they could play on the profile, because there's some games that would be in what you call an open world, where you might be playing with people you don't know. So, we told him, when you play Minecraft, you can play closed world up until he got to a certain age and he had a certain level of maturity where we could trust him. If something was wrong, he would say. he would let us know, or he wouldn't get himself into a situation and be afraid to say something to us. But there are certain games on social media as well as gaming profiles where they could be playing and the kid is thinking, I'm playing with other kids that are my age. No, that might be a 50-year-old woman or a 50-year-old man that's a predator that's playing with you in this game. So helping parents to understand that monitoring and having conversations about what they give their kids access to is important. Having ongoing conversations to say, how do we keep ourselves safe? How, just how we teach kids about safe touches and unwanted touches, and what do you do if these things happen, and how do you ask us for help? What do you do if somebody threatens you? The same thing for online environments. If you're in an online environment, and what if the person says, I know where you live, and if you don't send me a picture, I'm going to hurt your mommy and daddy. What are you supposed to do? How do you respond? So helping the kids to know these things and to know how to access their safe, caring adults is important, but also helping parents to know how do they support their kids in use and access to media and digital content, gaming, what they do, and also understanding that it changes and the technology moves so quickly. It's okay to say we're going to pull back, or it needs to be ongoing conversation because technology is changing so rapidly. They have to keep the lines of communication open. So just keep that in mind that, again, when we're thinking about this generation that we're working with now, Generation Z and millennials and Y, all of these young people that are ages 25 and younger, online bullying is real. You can be getting bullied from somebody from a school setting and totally not be connected in school. When young people make risky choices or just do bonehead teenage things, it's not back in the day when there were Polaroid pictures and those pictures were copies. When something happens, it gets instantly replayed forever. It can live digitally and be very hard to get removed and taken down. I will have to look it up for Kamisha and Ira, some digital resources to help that I learned in a training through the Oklahoma a Prevention Leadership Council that's sponsored by the Department of Health around digital safety. Like, what do you do if you've been bullied or you're being victimized, or a child is, and they come to you? What do you do? Because sometimes it's not just as easy as you go to the police. How do you get the pictures removed? How do you get the content taken down? What steps do you take? What's some of the current policies, across the nation? So I think that that's very important in our work because the threats that our young people face and the pressures are not just the way it used to be when we grew up. They're very different. A personal example for that I'll give for my son is one of his classmates was threatened like a week ago. She said she laughed at a girl in the cafeteria. The girl came up and said, were you laughing at me? And she was like, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna beat you up later on today. So later on that day, the girl found her like, in the hall or whatever, and, started something with her. The students, they were scooting back because they were like, oh, it's going to be a fight. And of course, they all took out their cameras. And he showed me some of the content. He was like, when it happened, it was like he received notices, and we've only allowed him on like one platform, and it was after like a 6-month conversation with my husband and I, but he had already received it in one platform from about 30 different students that he's connected to. All of these people were passing around. There were all these different angles of students who captured that one fight. It was digitally there for everybody to see in all these different perspectives, probably within 10 to 15 minutes after it happened. And it doesn't go away. That was 2 weeks ago. So that's just a very brief example. So what I have here for you all are a short list of resources. I have them already pulled up, and I'll go through them to visually show you, because I know for some people that's really helpful. But that 988 for the mental health lifeline, if it's easier for families, especially if they're having a crisis emergency, or anyone in your population, the kid, a community partner, and they want to get help for a kid specifically, if they call 988, our children's mobile crisis line is connected to 988. So they don't have to call the mobile crisis line if they don't want to. It's on the website. But if they call 988, it does route it into that children's mobile crisis triage method that I told you about. We have resources and training that's available to kids, to school communities, to you all as health workers. Some of it is face-to-face, some of it is e-learning, and I put the link from our prevention page. There are community-based prevention resources that our prevention division has, where you could share with law enforcement and different groups in the community that you may provide wellness and education to. Our school-based treatment, our children's treatment division that I work in also has a list of resources and articles, websites that are useful to you. And then I put in here our the Department of Mental Health's like flagship e-learning courses that are always helpful for us that are in the field. Most of the courses are no longer than about an hour, but it's, just things to give you places to start with working with kids in distress across different age categories, working with their parents. And then our new Department of Mental Health website has lots of live and e-learnings that are available across various populations. So I wanted to make sure that I lined that out. My contact information is here, and I put kind of like, these our state websites it can feel like you are Alice in Wonderland. So I put the link directly to school-based services so that you can see some of the things that are offered in the area where I work. So with that said, let me show these to you all really quickly. The other video that's here from Kent Heckle, he also works with the Search Institute, is about the importance of getting relationships right. I recommend that you all watch it for the simple fact that he's talking about, for us as workers in the field, working with children, supporting children, what are those key things that we need to keep in mind about the importance of relationship and what it means for our work. So one of the things that I want, and thank you, Reese, for sharing that. I think that's one of the resources that they gave us was Take It Down, that you put in the chat. So thank you. What we want to keep in mind is that when we think about external assets and all this that we talked about, I'm going to send you all like a whole set of documents that I've linked together about trauma and relationships. And people typically are like, well, Brittany, I want to hear like specifics about how do I respond to this? I work with this, I'm having this issue happen when I'm, educating or providing information. I'm providing, maybe for you all as nurses, these things keep popping up. And again, I could spend time giving you the answer, but guess what? Depending on the assets that are in a child's life, what they're going through, their trauma history, even how you would respond as a nurse or a preventionist providing education, how you would train a group of people, it's all going to have to be tempered based on those things that I just said. It's all going to have to be tempered in the delivery based on, like I said, that temperature check and your relationship. There's going to be things where if this is the first time you're meeting the client, or providing the training or connecting with this population, how you would deliver the content and what you share and focus on needs to be modified based on that. Versus like, I've been working with this group of students, or I've been giving presentations in this community to this group for, months or years off and on. What you deliver and how you deliver it, in order for us to be effective, we need to temper it based on the little bit that we know about the assets, the little bit that we know about the trauma and the current circumstances. So when kids have support, empowerment, boundaries and expectations, and constructive time, there is a relationship where it's directly tied to them thriving. And what we need to keep in mind for the work that we do is that we should be when we're delivering education, when we're having conversation, we're making decisions, it shouldn't always be on the behalf of the client or the community or the family or this population. It needs to be with them. Collaboration. We need to be providing choice. Even in something as simple as blood pressure, to say, how are you doing? All right, my hands might be a little cold. Is it okay if I take your blood pressure? Versus like, I'm going to need to take your blood pressure right now. You see the difference in that? It might be students are coming in for a workshop and they didn't have a choice to be there for the workshop, but we can slow down and say, let's establish team agreements. Okay. What do you all really want to learn out of today? Or how are you all feeling? Well, if everybody just came from PE, they're tired. So maybe I'm going to cut the content down a little bit. Maybe I'm going to give them an opportunity. We're going to do a popcorn little icebreaker activity, and I'm going to let them stretch their legs because they have a need in their body to move. You see what I'm saying? So power sharing, expanding possibilities. We need to express care in ways that make sense. I hope during this training, I've been able to do that in a way that makes sense and is effective for what we're talking about. So those types of things are super critical for us being successful. And if we're successful, then we know children and young people are thriving because they're getting what they need. And the adults who provide that in addition to us are able to provide the same thing, more of what they need. So I'm going to scroll down here towards the bottom and I'm going to pose some questions to you all. These are all the documents, and one of the documents, I kind of compiled them all. So there is this tool that was developed by young people for young people in partnership with the National Child Traumatic Stress Network around what is complex trauma. So, it's important for us to really think about, especially for you all being health and wellness professionals, that when you are providing education, you're providing interventions, we're not the only ones who are most likely working with these young people or the people out in the community who you're providing it to, who are working with the young people. They're getting messages and information from a lot of people. We have to recognize that the things that are going on can play a part. They do play a part in just even how young people respond, what they see, how they interact. So having a good insight about your population, I really recommend, look up some of the statistics that we have on our state health department website about the counties that you cover. If we look at, for us in Oklahoma, we still, unfortunately, we have some of the highest ACE scores, like 3 or plus in the country. The one that really makes the biggest difference, that rates the highest, is like children of divorced parents, so non-intact households. When we look at, you might look at your county, it might be that child abuse and neglect is high, or poverty is high, struggling with homelessness is high. It might be drug abuse is high. So keeping a pulse for us as the workers on what are those things, environmental things that I need to pay attention to, that affects our work. Do you live in a community where there's a high veterans population? Do you live in a community where there is a high population of current military service members that are serving us? If so, then that means you have a lot of families where they may always be in transition, or I need to keep in my mind that, you know what, during the month of the spring months, we really need to keep an eye out on our school age kids, because that's when military members find out if they might be relocated. So now that we're seeing more requests for services or interventions, or seeing this population go up to show up maybe with ER visits or something along the line, maybe those two things are connected. Kids of military families who are active might have a harder time in the spring because they might be finding out that they're going to be relocated and put someplace else. Now, for me, how that might show up if I'm, on the medical side of things, there might be more stomach aches. Maybe there's more headaches. Are kids getting enough sleep? These types of things. So, what I want you all to really think about is, if you look at this chart in here, I want you to kind of ignore what's on the left side. Look in the columns on the right side. I'm going to kind of blow this up because I know the writing is small. Some of these things that you may see, that how it shows up for the kids and the young people that are some of your clients, your consumers that you serve, you provide education, interventions, wellness to, is, maybe you have a kid that is very combative. They're always getting into fights. It always seems that they are misinterpreting what others think. They have a problem with authority. Maybe they are self-hurting, self-harming. They cut. They have a very unhealthy attachment to food, either eating too much or too little. Maybe, like somebody dropped into the chat, they are exhibiting very high-risk behavior, multiple sexual partners, unprotected. They are experimenting with drugs and alcohol, okay, pills. Maybe they have a hard time really wanting to use the interventions that you offer, or you notice that there repeats, they come in for the same issues that pop up. Maybe you find out, or you recognize that they seem very disconnected for other children their age, or the workers or the community members that you're training are like, what do I do with these kids where they never want to talk to anyone? Or, when you're trying to talk to them on a one-on-one intervention or treatment, they're pretty non-responsive. Okay. Do any of them seem to have, again, looking on the right side, not the left, a hard time knowing how to explain or verbalize how they're feeling? Maybe you've worked with them for a while, but they have a hard time trusting. Okay. Injurious behavior, like I talked about before. Or, they're really concerned about thinking that no one cares about them. So when we're seeing those sorts of behaviors, or we have community members as we're providing education, they're saying, what do I do about it? We have to be able to recognize the connecting threads. Those young people may be struggling with trauma, having a hard time with emotional abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, physical violence, and/or abuse. Okay. So I say that to say it's very important for us to keep in mind that when we're seeing these types of problems, where is the root coming from? Where could it be coming from? And it's important for us to know that there might be a connecting thread and to pull that into our work. So you all will be getting a set of fact sheets that kind of go over all these different things that I discussed. I want to zoom over here really quick to the website. me see. Did I have it pulled up? No, I didn't. I didn't pull it up on the website with the links, but let me stop sharing my screen for a second. Stop sharing. So let me stop sharing my screen for a second. And I'm going to share a couple of more resources that I think would be helpful. So for you all that are working with young people that are dealing with risky behavior, we do have a training and it's free. It's called TIP, Transition to Independence. A lot of the training in this modality is for young people ages 16 to 25, and specifically some of the activities and interventions that you can perform is about how to have conversations, how to work with a young person that's exhibiting risky behavior. How can we even do some goal setting or within the context of that risky behavior? And a lot of it has to go with, how can we start with where you are and work backwards to get you to, to the safest place incrementally with what the young person is willing to do. So, if the young person is experimenting with drugs or pills, maybe the first step, is as much as this may be against our value, is like, okay, so can we maybe agree for the next month? I mean, for next week, you've been popping pills, but are you willing to only use pills if you know exactly where they came from? Versus I'm just going to take whatever I can get my hands on. Now, I know that is not the ultimate goal. And somebody might say, Brittany, that's unsafe. Well, guess what? They're going to keep using. That's the most unsafe. If we can get them to reduce the risk, maybe to just get their pills from one place instead of like, I'm just going to take whatever I find and mix it together because they may end up ODing or they have. That's the first step. If they're willing to agree to that, because they're already using. So risk management. And then we work from there. And over the next month, it's like, okay, so what about, would you be willing to, maybe you've been popping pills and you've been, smoking weed. Maybe you try this week only taking pills once and you smoke whenever you want. You see what I'm saying? So if we're looking at this from a client-centered approach, we have to be willing for ourselves as the worker to let go of our own expectation and our own belief of what we want them to do and what we think is the ultimate goal, and for them being the safest, and to meet them where they are. It's not easy, okay? It might be easy from the client's perspective, but for us as the worker, in my head, I'm saying, I don't want them to use it all. I don't want them to pop pills at all. I don't want them to have sex at all, or at least pick one partner and use protection every single time. But guess what? If I tell them that, or if I say I'm not willing to even try this approach, they're still going to be continuing to engage in that behavior. So instead, I'm tempering my lens and my approach as the worker to work from a place of collaboration, to not move faster than them, to be compassionate and non-judgmental, and we do some risk management. I would say there are some apps that I will send you all for teens that are that are struggling, to get them connected, where there's an app where it's called My3, and basically what you can do as a safe caring adult is you help them to create a digital safety plan, and then they can electronically share that safety plan with their top maybe 5 people who they would go to in a time of need. So it is using and leveraging technology for a positive way. And there's also apps similar to that where maybe it's about them having a safe place to talk and decompress. The last one that I'll share is what's called the Healthy Transitions document. So it's a document, just like a template format that Julie Geddes, our senior manager in suicide prevention, has developed, where we can utilize when young people have been out of school, and schools even can utilize this entire process for more than 2 to 3 days about anything. It doesn't have to be mental health related. It could have been health related, or maybe a kid moved, or maybe they were moved from their home, or there was a medical emergency and they missed 5 days of school. It's how do we as adults kind of build a really small plan connected to their school and their parents to help them transition successfully back into the classroom. How are we ensuring that people are checking in with them? Sometimes it can be very stressful for the kids because they've missed class, or they've missed the relationship with their peers. So how do they navigate successfully? How are we as school partners and community partners working to help them? So that's a template document. And then, what I will say to end is, when we're thinking about how do we identify these young people that are struggling, I would say there's some key things. So when we think about the importance of relationship that I hammered on this morning is, asking kids, do you feel like you have someone in your home that you can speak to, a parent or someone like a parent, where if you feel unsafe or something is going on, you can talk to them and share how you feel, and they listen to you? Do they have 2 to 3 adults in their life that they feel like they have that same type of relationship with? Oftentimes, especially for kids in school settings, that's not necessarily their teacher. It might be the custodian or a cafeteria worker that always asks how their day is when they see them in school. It might be the school secretary. It might be you, the school nurse. Helping them and knowing for them, do they have connections to at least a couple of safe, caring adults? Um, do they know how to get help if they need it? If they feel in a place of overwhelm, or they're not safe, whether that's physically, emotionally, mentally, do they know where or what to do, how to get help? What are their coping strategies? So, if we're identifying kids that are struggling right now, we have more kids especially here, in Oklahoma. I can say this because I'm working and I get the phone calls from our community partners and from teachers and principals, kids that are struggling, that never were having disruptive behaviors or were struggling with their grades. They're having a hard time because they went through such a long period of being isolated. The state of the world, everybody, for a while there, we didn't know about COVID in terms of how to keep ourselves safe. There was a lot of uneasiness. There were other things going in our country, lots of uneasiness, and children were anxious and they were worried just like we were. People died. They were concerned just like we were. Connections were lost, opportunities were lost. So I say that to say, if you have kids that, they don't have at least relationships with 1 to 2 other peers, they don't have friendships, they're not connected to safe, caring adults. What do those relationships look like in the context of school for our youth and young adults? Do they have an opportunity to work or give back? Maybe they're unemployed, but they're volunteering. Are they always isolated? Are you seeing them repeatedly come in with the same health conditions, or their health always seems to be just not in the best place? Like their immune system is worn down. Those are some of the warning signs we want to look for. Also, I would say on the opposite end, do you have some young people, when you provide interventions or training, and they seem super clingy, or always, maybe they kind of present as if they have a little bit of hyperactivity? When you are dealing with, you've been through traumatic situations, sometimes a trauma response can show up as hyperactivity or inability to focus. So I would say, those are the types of things we want to look for. And for parents, our kids having quality night's sleep. What's their relationship with technology? Making sure that we're also monitoring not only what they're accessing, how they access it, and even where they charge their phones and computers. So make sure that, it shouldn't be in the room, living room. Our parents having conversations ongoing with kids about things that are going on in their life, and keeping lines of communication open so that people know how to find help for their children and the kids of their community and where to access it. So I am 5 minutes over time. I'm stopping right now. I'm going to make sure that going back to that list of needs, that I have resources pulled for everything I discussed and for those things that you all highlighted. But again, I will close with, you are the medicine. So it starts with each one of us making sure that we embody the wellness and health principles that we're trying to our best every single day. And I know you all work hard every single day to instill in the young people we have a chance to work with, for our children, for our community. You are the intervention, you are the medicine. So the takeaway is, in the post-pandemic, what our kids need right now more than ever that they needed before is you. They need your presence. So that means you taking care of yourself, making sure that if you feel like, or right now you're in a place of being burnt out and overworked, that you get yourself to a place of health, because it's hard for us to transfer that to someone else when we're not doing it for ourselves. So making sure for us to be the intervention, that they know, if I don't know anybody else, but I know Miss Lydia, if something's wrong, I could at least ask her, how do I get help? I know that Mr. Ira is here, or he shows up once a month. So that's an opportunity for me to ask for help. If a parent is with Crystal, to say, I know that I can call Crystal and Crystal is going to direct me in the right place. So us being the intervention is the key. We can't be the intervention if we don't take care of ourselves. And to transfer and to help these relationships grow, we have to be compassionate. We have to exhibit ongoing cultural humility. We need to take time to listen to those we're educating and we're providing the interventions and the services with. And whatever amount of time that we have, and what I can say about the motivational interviewing, go to it as often as we have it. You can sign up for free. It's a conversational technique. Okay, you don't have to be clinical to be trained in motivational interviewing. It's like building a muscle. The more we practice embodying the principles, then when we're in the context of the relationship with our client or clientele, we know how to respond in a way that's compassionate and effective, no matter the amount of time that you have, whether you are in more of like a medical setting or the county, hospital setting, and it's like you got 5 minutes, or like I said, you got 50 minutes, or it's ongoing and you're coming in and out, working with them in the community or their home, or providing training. We can be effective in those settings, provide education, get people out of survival brain and in learning brain, and build rapport no matter the amount of time. So I thank you all for your time today. I hope that you feel that you're walking away with something useful and I didn't waste your Friday morning. But that is the takeaway, is what they need to navigate in this post-pandemic is us. They need us to be patient We need to be effective with the time that we have with our young people and those that are caring for them. And how we do that is really slowing down to make sure we're moving in a collaborative way, we're providing choice, and that people know how to access the help that they need and helping them to grow in their self-advocacy. So I'm going to turn it back over to Ira and Kamisha now.
Well, I do have a couple of comments to make. Thank you, first of all. Very informative. But in the beginning, your presentation to me felt kind of mundane, but actually profound and most importantly, relational. You mentioned the word at the very end, cultural humility. It made me just think the word that popped out was human humility. I mean, because culture is an aspect, but it's just being there in the moment with the people. Mm-hmm. Practical advice about connecting, meeting clients where they are in their life experience and presentation. In that moment where you're there with them, that is their presentation. Really, you talked about mitigation. I really, that point is so important that you brought out about here's where they are, but good grief, where have they been? And it's not wrong to
No.
go for less, not go for
It's
the whole.
hard. It's hard, but it's not wrong. That's why I really I can't sell it enough about the motivational interviewing, you all, because I say it in training all the time. Oh, we got to take off our cape. Sometimes before we sit down and we're asking, we want to dig into the solutions. Our first thing we need to do is say, what has worked for you? Or are there times where maybe something, it doesn't always work. It doesn't have to be working at 100%, but if you're like, well, it's working at 30%. Okay, well, what's working the 30% of the time? I know what's going wrong the 70% of the time. Well, what's working for you that 30%? We always want to put on our cape and save the day. And we have to like slow down and not get into action mode and really be present and say, what's going on? What is working for you, or what has worked for you? And also, what are you willing to do? Because if we kind of start just throwing things out, for one, it might not really apply culturally or be something that they're willing to do. Or we might think it's a great idea, and it really honestly may be a great idea. I know you all are great people. It might be really a great idea, but that's not their cup of tea. So we're giving them interventions that are amazing, but don't apply to them. And in the end, that it doesn't work. But a lot of it is about us really resisting what we call the righting reflex to try to make things right. And also understanding that, like, like I said, if someone is exhibiting risky behavior, me telling them to stop is not going to make them stop. Okay. But if I can recognize where they are and be willing to withhold my judgment and all the things that I want for them to do and say, what are you willing to do differently right now? We got to start with where they are and work back from that. Like you said, Ira, mitigating the risk. That's huge. But oftentimes that mitigation approach is not because the clients in our communities don't want to do it. It's because we as the workers take that option off the table. We're saying, like, I'm not willing to say, no, I don't want you to have to do this a little less. I want you to stop. I want you to stop it now. And we just need to build a plan around you stopping it now. And guess what? They're not going to build a plan around stopping it now. They're just going to keep it from you. And that's not serving us in our ability to help them be healthy and thrive.
I'm sorry, what you just said. Go ahead.
Sorry, Ira. I just wanted to provide opportunity for our audience to share their comments,
Yes.
Provide any questions that they may have too as well to add to the conversation as we get ready to wrap up. There is a lot that's in the chat to send. Thank you. This was very informative. I also placed a link in the chat for you all to share your thoughts about the training registration process, this topic that Ms. Couch has provided for us, and any additional topics that you might feel you need to be able to provide the great service in the child and adolescent health sector. So I just wanted to add that. So if you have any additional comments, questions, or anything like that you would like to share, you can unmute your mics at this time or place those in the chat. Sorry, Ira, I just wanted to make sure I plugged that for the audience.
Thank you, Kamisha. I appreciate that. So just again, thank you for a very practical presentation. And I'm not out there like all of you, but you know what? This is good for me and my son, my children, and people that we meet. So it's just not just work related. It's just thank you. Okay. I've been throughout this session, I've been posting the sign-in sheets, and thank all of you for signing. We hit 54 out of 53. I mean, people might have checked on and off, but everyone has submitted things. I've submitted all the results to your DNMs so that they have them on record. Thank you for doing that. The next MCH video conference is scheduled for Thursday, May 4th, in conjunction with the Preparing for a Lifetime. It's everyone's responsibility stakeholders meeting. There will be helpful information shared in observance of Women's Health Month. You'll be receiving more information about this training in the coming weeks. So thank you and have a great weekend.